The NHL Draft contains such a mystique. While there are some standouts that get rushed to the show immediately and become generational phenoms, the average development curve is still gradual enough to where no one exactly knows how any one prospect will produce until about 8 years in. Makes sense when you think about it. Around 25 years old, you generally know what to make of any given athlete, no matter the sport. But as is the case with many things in life, sometimes playing the waiting game just doesn't work. So as we close in on 8 years since the 2018 NHL Draft, I see no better time than now to make judgment calls on the first round. But one thing needs to be taken into account here, and likely for the next 2 or 3 years that I do draft recaps: the COVID-19 pandemic. Without a doubt, this completely screwed over the development processes of several players. So if it seems like there are more than a few busts here, well, definitely a place to look. With all that out of the way,
New York,
roll it!
the Buffalo Sabres are proud to select Frölunda defenseman Rasmus Dahlin.
When you're being compared to Victor Hedman before the draft, you have a lot of expectations you need to live up to, especially when what you're being complimented on is damn near everything you need to succeed in the league. Wouldn't you know it, Dahlin has been a slam dunk for a Sabres team that was desperately looking for a way out of their disgusting situation with their previous attempt at a rebuild. Terrible managerial decisions mesh with Terry Pegula like cigarettes and coffee. But with some of the best stats Buffalo has seen from a defenseman, it's a miracle he hasn't won the Norris yet. More than deserving of captaincy in Buffalo, and more than deserving of a parade in his honor already.
The Carolina Hurricanes select from the Barrie Colts, Andrei Svechnikov.
If you listen real closely, you can still hear Jordan Martinook screaming his name in the locker room of MSG. The first to ever hit the Michigan in the NHL. With a heavily refined offensive prowess and raw defensive potential, it was hard for Carolina to be gift-wrapped the second overall pick and not use it on quite possibly the best offensive prospect 2018 had to offer. Barring a couple of injuries, he's been nearly everything that's been asked of him. Not really eclipsing the point-per-game mark as would be desired, but he's consistently slotted in nicely on the top line with Sebastian Aho and Seth Jarvis. Not to mention, he became one of the greatest memes in recent NHL history.
From asset of the Finnish Elite League, Jesperi Kotkaniemi.
Of all the players today, I feel like Kotkaniemi has been on quite possibly the strangest career journey of all of them. And it all started from a pissing match between Tom Dundon and the Montreal Canadiens. When Sebastian Aho got offer-sheeted by Montreal back in 2019, Dundon and the Canes weren't keen on undoubtedly their best forward getting poached without them having anything to say about it. He was their restricted free agent after all. And so, Dundon and the Canes offer-sheeted Kotkaniemi for $6.1 million, which the Habs absolutely could not afford. Was it worth it? Probably not. Kotkaniemi is still on an 8-year deal and is still putting up decent work on the third line, but you don't do that big of a show for a third liner unless you're petty as all hell. Something that Dundon shown he 100% was when he made the signing bonus Aho's jersey number. I can respect the hater in him.
Senators are extremely pleased to select from the Boston U Terriers, Brady Tkachuk.
Oh, bitten hand Brady. What is there to say about you that hasn't already been said? A decent season at BC parlayed into a stellar performance at World Juniors and a 4th overall selection. Since then, 3 30-goal campaigns, an Olympic gold medal, and captaincy of the Ottawa Senators. Admittedly, his leadership style has had many calling into question his efficacy, but hey, the Sens are back in the playoffs and they're getting swept by Carolina, and he's trash-talking the team on his podcast. Everything about his character off the ice set aside though, he lives and dies by his competitive drive and his strong shot. If he runs himself out of Ottawa, I know a good few teams with wing depth issues that might want to take a chance on him.
Arizona Coyotes are proud to select from the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds of the Ontario Hockey League center Barrett Hayton.
Hayton was nothing short of a gamble. John Chayka has never been great at this whole drafting thing, and his approach rubs old heads the wrong way for being analytically minded, and rubs analytics nerds the wrong way for not actually knowing anything about analytics. So why not take a guy that had a couple okay seasons in Sault Ste. Marie before anyone thought he'd go? The result has been mediocre at best. Between injuries and being leapfrogged by others in the organization, Hayton's never emerged as anything more than a solid third-line guy. It's not even necessarily a bad thing, but over some of the others later on down the line, these fans, I don't envy you for hiring the snake back into the league.
The Detroit Red Wings select from Halifax of the Canadian Hockey League, Filip Zadina.
He was really looking to bet on himself. a great season in Halifax that he never really backed up with anything of note. Detroit is partially to blame for Zadina's poor rep, asking for way too much for him at the deadline, especially when they had very little leverage. But when you're out of the States less than a decade after being drafted 6th overall, and you never even surpassed 25 points in the season, you might be lucky he got a chance in the first place.
Vancouver selects from the University of Michigan, Quinn Hughes.
Already within this short time frame, Hughes is building up a resume to be one of the greatest defensemen of this generation. 5 straight 60-plus assist season, a Norris Trophy, an Olympic gold medal. What isn't there to love about the way Hughes plays? The relentless meddling of the Canucks relegated him to being shipped to Minnesota, but good luck to Vancouver in making Zeev William and Liam Ogren into anything even remotely equivalent. Meanwhile, Hughes in his new home in Minnesota is still raking. Though they might be getting steamrolled by Colorado, it's not the fault of Quinn. I'd start thinking about where you want your bus to be.
And with our choice, 8th overall, the Blackhawks are proud to select from Brynäs in Sweden, Adam Boqvist.
Boqvist at the start was a semi-reliable bottom 4 defenseman, but he runs into one of the many issues that plague bottom 4 defensemen. One I know intimately as a Mason Lohrei apologist. He has solid offensive zone presence and can facilitate sustained pressure, but God forbid we get one of those who also plays defense. Going his entire career without a single plus season for as weighted as a stat plus minus is, if it stinks everywhere, you might need to check your own shoe. Damn shame he's not as good as expected.
New York Rangers select from Tractor Chelybinsk, Vitaly Kravtsov.
Another one who's back across the pond already. A massive showing in the 2018 KHL playoffs spiked his draft pedigree to heights it never should have been at. While he's been a strong contender in the K, over here, he's barely been anything. Placed on waivers for the purposes of terminating his contract with Abbotsford? Yeah, sorry buddy, you're not coming back from that. Sometimes players just don't translate to the North American game.
And with our selection in the first round, we're proud to select from the London Knights, Evan Bouchard.
Bouchard is nothing if not a lightning rod. The true litmus test of how bad a defenseman's overall defense is allowed to be if he continues putting up insane amounts of points. Heck, what he's done this year would make Makar blush. However, there are always naysayers, and I'll cop to being one of them. How good is he actually? It's awfully easy for someone to put up career years on the same ice as Connor McDavid, and his defense always leaves a lot to be desired. But as a diehard Bruins fan who has seen their team have unmistakable issues with this in particular, one of the biggest utilities that defensemen bring to the NHL is secondary scoring. And for a team that's been begging for nigh on a decade for someone not wearing 29, 93, or 97 to score consistently, I think Bouchard succeeds pretty well.
And on behalf of the Islanders, proud to select from the USA Hockey National Development Team program, Oliver Wahlstrom.
8 years ago, this pick didn't make sense to me. Wahlstrom was never someone that shocked me, even putting up a point per game in the USHL. His form at BC was more in line with what I expected. Someone who'd maybe cut it up as a bottom 6 guy, but never would make a major impact. 8 years later, and having been passed around on waivers for the past year or two in New York, then in Boston, then in San Jose, I feel vindicated. I'm sorry, man.
Islanders will select from Acadie Bathurst defenseman Noah Dobson.
They say you never get the talent back that you give up in trades. The Islanders might actually prove that wrong with one of the picks they got from trading Dobson, since Kashan Aitchison is insane in Barrie, but he's going to have to fill in some big shoes. With one of the greatest individual seasons from a defenseman on Long Island, he was flipped to Montreal for 2 firsts and the goal-scoring prowess of Emil Heineman before the draft last year. The good news is Dobson's been just as good in Montreal as he was in New York. The bad news is he suffered an injury right before the playoffs this year, and Montreal desperately needs defensemen. I wonder if the Islanders have any defensemen of interest.
With the 13th pick of the 2018 NHL Entry Draft, the Dallas Stars are proud to select from the Flint of the OHL, Ty Dellandrea.
I've always been rooting for Dellandrea, even when he gives me nothing to root for. Only eclipsing 25 points once in his career is not a recipe for success, and being constantly on bridge deals is not how a difference maker should be handled. That said, I've always appreciated his locker room presence, and he makes for a strong part of any bottom 6. Here's hoping he can find some decent form, but it's not looking good.
Philadelphia selects from the U.S. National Team Development Program, Joel Farabee.
Farabee is always a fun player to watch, no matter if he's in Philly or Calgary. A few 20-goal seasons here and there, and always with a strong motor on him. The intensity he plays with is rivaled by very few, and in a league where intensity is paramount and can spell life or death, no matter where he goes, he'll be a valued member of any third line. Great get.
The Florida Panthers select from Yaroslava, Grigori, Denisenko.
This is a term in baseball I like to call Quad A, and it's used to describe players who are undoubtedly too talented to stay in the minors, but can't crack it in the majors to save their lives. And several strong performances in Syracuse, Charlotte, Henderson, and Milwaukee have indicated that Denisenko has true value as a winger, but it never translates in the show. He's now back in Russia, and I think we all know where this is going.
We're proud to select from the Czech Republic, Martin.
Ever heard of this guy? Yeah, figures. The game just never translated from Czechia to the States. He was strong in Pardubice, especially in the playoffs, but nothing could ever really work for him over here. He's now back in Czechia, and doing pretty well for himself there. Good for him.
With the first selection in the 2018 entry draft, the New Jersey Devils are proud to select Ty Smith.
I won't lie, Smith being out of the show feels weird to me. He provided decent bottom pair offensive support from the blue line, and he was on a heater before being placed on the COVID list. Is that it? Does he now have long COVID or something? I don't know. I don't particularly want to speculate. But it's a shame he's fallen enough to where he has to go overseas to find any playing time. Sorry, Ty.
With the 18th pick, the Columbus Blue Jackets are proud to select from the London Knights, Liam Foudy.
Crazy how this guy's first big moment was embarrassing the Leafs. Well, for many, you either get your first by embarrassing the Leafs or embarrassing the Bruins. What's he done since? Less than a season and a half worth of games and being shuffled around the AHL like a deck of cards. He and his brother Jean-Luc have kind of stalled in their developments. Kind of shows you that a good season in juniors doesn't mean everything, especially on the powerhouse that's London.
Philadelphia Flyers are proud to select from Thayer Academy, Jay O'Brien.
Sometimes taking all 4 years in college doesn't pay off, and it didn't really for O'Brien. One of only 3 players in the first round this year to have never played a game at the NHL level. He tore up Boston College, but with the prior distinction, you already know where this is going. 5 busts in a row. What are we doing here, guys?
From Karpat, Rasmus Kupari.
Oh boy, another player who's back overseas. Gonna chalk this up as another bust, Bex? Probably. Kupari was elevated by a strong showing in Karpat after getting drafted, but never did much in the States. A bad start only got worse as he was shipped off to Winnipeg in the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade. A move that never really did much for Los Angeles, but killed any momentum Kupari may have had. A career taxi squad guy in North America who's finally found himself with a role with Lugano in Switzerland.
San Jose selects from Guelph Ryan Merkley.
What did I just say with Foudy? You can't trust someone's potential based off of great showings in the OHL, especially one with London. Do they sometimes pan out? Yes. Merkley is not one of those that did. 76 points in COVID year resulted in a grand total of 39 games played in the NHL and being shipped off to Beijing to play with Kunlun Red Star. He's now in Germany playing for Straubing. Please, for the love of God, give me someone that's at least made a difference in the show.
And here it is. Rangers select from the USA Development Program, Andrei Miller.
And we finally break the ice. Miller is the dictionary definition of a defensive defenseman. A player you appreciate the impact of when his name isn't being said. While he has strong blue line play that gets him on the scoreboard more often than not, his strength is in the neutral zone, being able to play in transition really well. No wonder the Rangers got a first for him, even if some of his inconsistencies rubbed the Big Apple the wrong way. But on a Carolina team where even with Slavin, Chatfield, and Nikishin, he's still making a name for himself as one of their best defensemen? Go ahead and cash that extension you got from them. Good work.
From Luleå of the Swedish Elite League, Isaac Lundestrom.
Lundestrom has been exactly what he advertised in Luleå. A solid bottom six forward who performs pretty nicely as a penalty killer. Minus a great year in Anaheim where he put up 16 goals, he's never really broken that mold, and that's okay. He's not really supposed to. Which is why I extra don't understand why Bonus has him up on the top line with Fantilli and Marchenko, with Sillinger on the second, and Johnson on the fourth.
That's the product of an ill mind.
Come on, he put up more points than Lundestrom from that position. When are you going to realize that Lundestrom belongs on the fourth?
From Leksand, Sweden, Filip Johansson.
You know how I said Jay O'Brien was one of 3 players who have never made the show in this year's first round? This is number 2. A mediocre defenseman who couldn't crack it in the offensive, defensive, or neutral zones. He is now back in Sweden. Home sweet home.
St. Louis Blues are proud to select from Vaxo, Sweden, Formic Dominic Bach.
And here's number 3. He's been strong in his native Germany, being one of the few bright spots on Frankfurt, but that doesn't help St. Louis. Oh well.
Sénateur de sont très fiers de choisir. The Ottawa Senators are pleased to select from the Alberta Junior League Okotoks Jacob Bernard Docker.
Docker's been interesting. A solid defensive defenseman who can, at times, be something of a second goalie with how good he is at blocking shots. But oftentimes that isn't enough. I'd had to root for a team that had Derek Forbort on it. After being shipped off to Buffalo in a swapping of talents and assets, he wasn't tendered an extension and was picked up by Detroit, and has been slowly phased out of the lineup after they traded for Justin Falk at the deadline this year. And trying to make waves in a defensive core that includes him, Simon Edvinsson, Moritz Seider, and Axel Sandin Pellikka? Not gonna happen. Will be a solid addition to the defensive core wherever he goes, though.
Blackhawks are proud to select from Drummondville, Nicholas Beaudin.
When you're seen as an unproductive member of the early 2020s Chicago Blackhawks rebuild, a rebuild so fraught with insanity that they tore it all down less than 3 years into everyone's careers, you know you don't belong. Dominique Ducharme may have sung his praises as a strong and intelligent defenseman, but it never translated on the ice. With that vote of confidence, he has future coach written all over him, but in terms of his playing career,
New York Rangers select from Luleå in the Swedish Hockey League, Niels Lundqvist.
Lundqvist was a player the Rangers sold high on. I can't blame them. With all the hype coming out about him in the SHL as one of the best defensemen under 21 to ever have laced up skates in Luleå, getting a first for him was smart. Since landing in Dallas, he's been a solid second-pair defenseman. While it'd take a miracle for him and Thomas Harley to usurp Lindell and Heiskanen for top-pair responsibilities, the two of them make up some of the strongest green walls that don't exist in Boston. Is he going to be what he was in Sweden? Not likely. Has he lived up to the expectations placed on him at the draft? Honestly, yeah. He's a strong NHL defenseman on one of the best defensive cores in the entire NHL.
With the 29th selection in the 2018 NHL entry draft, the Toronto Maple Leafs are proud to select from the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, Rasmus Sandin.
Quite possibly the most perplexing move made by the Toronto Maple Leafs. No, I'm not saying that about drafting Sandin. In fact, if there's one thing I regret about in my Leafs video, it's not mentioning Sandin once. I don't think it was too much of a stretch to say he was the best defenseman on the Leafs pretty consistently while he was there. Was he putting up the same point totals as Morgan Rielly? No, but he was the strong defensive presence that the team needs now. Trading him for a first and 9 games of Eric Gustafsson was one of the worst trades Dubas ever made, even if that pick did get them Easton Cowan. What's he doing in Washington? Being a top-pair defenseman. Toronto, meanwhile, is crying into a picture of Labatt, thinking about what could have been with him.
Detroit Red Wings are proud to select from Drummondville, Joe Veleno.
Exceptional player status. Truly a coin flip of whether or not you actually pan out. When it does, you get generational game changers like Tavares, Ekblad, and McDavid. When it doesn't, well, that's when you get players whose upside is Joe Veleno. Mediocre bottom 6 guys who get shuffled around the league. 6+ games this season indicates some sort of value. I can't find much of it to save my life, though. I guess this is a quality PK guy.
Washington Capitals are very proud to select from the Red Deer Rebels of the Western Hockey League, Alexander Alexiev.
And we close out our first round with one of the most fun names to say in the NHL. Put this dude on a team with Luke Evangelista, Andreas Athanasiou, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, and let's see if we can't drag Slater Koekkoek and Jonathan Chichu out of retirement. Unfortunately, as fun as Alexander Alexiev is a name to say, He's never given us many reasons to say it, with just 80 games through 4 seasons, most of the time being a taxi squad guy. He's now in Wilkes-Barre Scranton. Tough go. Alright, screw it, I'm saying it again. Alexander Alexiev. Wow, that kind of sucked. Out of a first round of 31, a whopping 15 of them were busts, with 3 of them not even making the NHL roster at any point within the past 8 years. The other 28 at least played in the NHL, with 22 having played at least 100 games in the show. And zooming out a bit, the rest of the draft hasn't been that bad either. Sure, it hasn't been as deep as, say, 2015 has given us, but the second round gave the league some quality middle 6 and bottom 4 options like Mattias Samuelsson, Ryan McLeod, Jack Drury, Martin Feravari, Kirill Marchenko, Sean Durzi, and Kevin Ball. Montreal also got a decent defenseman. You may have heard of him. Alex Romanov, I believe is his name. Wonder if the Habs can tell me where he is now. The third round continued with some other depth pieces like Jack McBain and Connor Dewar, but the standout was absolutely Lucas Dostal. When John Gibson can't bail you out anymore, you gotta get another goalie to help do that job, and Dostal has done exactly that. Fourth round is where it starts to taper off a bit, with Joel Hofer, Paul Cotter, and Filip Kurashev being the only true game changers found in the round. Fifth round manages to bring our attention back a little bit, with Samuel Ersson being a strong backup tendy to Dan Vladar for some reason, and this Yegor Sharangovich guy. I've heard he's pretty good. Sadly, rounds 6 and 7 are pretty barren, with Pontus Holmberg and Michael Kesselring being the only consistent NHLers to break out of this lull. Kind of the mystique of the draft. Sometimes you might hit on something pretty decent in the second round. Sometimes you just flounder for 2 days.